I got to a milestone of 1,000 subscribers, which is laughably low for a lot of YouTubers, but it was exciting to get there. And I thought I'd commemorate by making another video of this HP28S, because I guess more than any other calculator, it sparked my love of calculators, or my extra deep appreciation of them. This is not the one I got in 1988. That one ended up with a friend of mine, but I purchased this one a few years back, and mine was made in the USA. This one's not. I think this is Singapore. I'm not sure. It's on the back, but we're not going to go there right now. I had seen a classmate of mine with a 28C that had 2K in memory, and I was blown away by how good it was. Now, my grandpa had gotten me a Casio FX 7000G, which was the first Casio graphing calculator, I believe. And that was an excellent calculator. I underappreciated how good it was, and I probably didn't really understand how to use it as well as I should have. But when I saw the 28C, I knew that that was what I wanted. It was just superior, at least in my estimation. And so I ended up the next year, again, sometime around 1988, buying an HP 28S. It had 32K of memory, so 16 times the original, the 28C, at the same price. So that guy who had the 28C was very annoyed, but oh well. Anyway, $235 was the list price when these came out, so it was a chunk of change. That would be like spending $571 today. That is a ton. That would buy you 3.5 HP primes. So hard to even compare just how expensive they were, but worth every penny. I loved the calculator. It was excellent for mechanical engineering in undergrad. First of all, it had great button feel, like just great feel to these keys, whether you would type in numeric or alpha, and that made it really addictive is not the right word, but it made it really pleasing to use. And I also loved the fact that no matter how fast I hit these keys, and I was probably quicker back in the day, it could keep up. It never it could lag once in a while, but it would never lose track of what I had typed. So there was a keyboard buffer in there. And if you typed like 777 real fast, it would do 3 of them. It would never do an extra. It would never happen to lose one. So if you hit the key twice real fast in succession, it was going to do it. I don't think that all calculators, I'll say this, I don't think my 48GX is as reliable that way. I don't trust it the same. This one I didn't even have to really look at the display. I knew if I typed it, it was going to be reliably entered. This was my first calculator with RPN, reverse Polish notation, postfix. So in other words, you would type in the numbers to multiply, you'd type in the 2 numbers, and then you'd tell it the operation. That was superb in terms of efficiency compared to a lot of other calculators back then. The best thing about this calculator for me was its solver. It was just excellent, easy to use, and just superbly designed. I'll give a quick example. We're going to do mass, we're going to do velocity, oops, I want lowercase. So you have this nice keyboard that doesn't require hitting any alpha keys. The penalty is that the form factor, it takes up a lot of desk space. But anyway, so we're going to square velocity, we're going to multiply it times that mass, and we're going to divide by 2. So 1/2 mv squared. And let's set that equal to m times g, and then times h. I didn't know how to do this at the time, embarrassingly enough. I would actually go and edit that and then insert this part, but turned out I recently learned that you could hit equal, hit enter, and then that would merge them together. That would have been really nice to know a long time ago. So I'm going to make a copy of it, and then you could store that into the solver and go to the solver. So I'd store and then I'd hit solver, and then it just asks for the variables. And so let's just put them in. Let's say our mass is 10, our velocity is 15, we'll do gravity 9.81, and let's say we want to solve for our height. We would do shift and hit the solve, and this is going to solve for that height. So there you go. Just so handy. Anyway, I loved the way that worked. What also was cool is, and I'll leave that menu behind, you could very easily save these equations. So let's say this is one I want to keep reusing. I could give it a name like, let's just say energy. We'll say, so let's say I wanted to call that my energy equation. I could store that. And now it's in the user menu right there, along with a bunch of variables that I just used. So anytime I wanted to use that equation, I could hit it, it would bring it up, I'd hit solver, store, solver, and I'm ready to go. Just so easy to use. And not only was that cool, you could also put things in your own folders. They were called directories back then. And let's say I wanted to create one called formulas, like FRM. I could type that in and hit create directory, and now I would have in my user directory a folder called formula. I could go into that folder and then store my equations, and I could even have subfolders within here. So just really, really well laid out. Okay, so if I wanted to take the energy equation that we had just made, there's no easy way that I know of to move it, but the point is I could save that, resave that under this formulas folder. We'll just call it ERG. I'm not sure what happens if I give it the same name. Okay, it lets me do that. So because it's in a different directory. And I think to go up a folder, I don't really remember, but I guess you go to home. There might be a quicker way. I'm rusty on this calculator. It does not get used much anymore, though I do still have a soft spot in my heart for it. And then once in a while you'd have to purge all these variables because they'd build up. But anyway, point is, really cool that you can save any formulas you wanted, and really cool that you could build your own directory structure. Another great thing about this calculator was if you wanted to do matrix math. So if you had simultaneous equations, you could, I'll just give an example without trying to explain everything. So this is what's on the right hand side of the equals. So I would enter my answer matrix, and then I would enter my coefficients matrix. So 1, 2, 3. And if I wanted to solve for x, y, and z, I would simply divide my answer matrix by my coefficients matrix, and we would have our x, y, and z values. I used this a ton, and it was so easy to use. You didn't have to go into any special menus. It was just right there on the same line, same display that you'd use to just do the next calculation, 15 times whatever. So loved that. If let's say I had a 15 and a 1.5, I do have to enter it. So if I put that in and hit times and I was like, oh no, I meant divide, I could just undo it and then hit divide. That was slick. I definitely use the undo a lot. Another very cool thing this could do was unit conversions. So let's say we had 100 and we wanted to put in pound force. If you didn't know the abbreviations, you would have to look them up in the units menu. You could fetch them out of there. In fact, I'll do that. Let's see if we can do that. If we go into units, let's say I wanted feet, so I hit the F, that gets me close, and then I can find feet right here, and I could fetch it, which will put it there. So pound force, feet per, and let's say we were doing minute. I could look up the unit, but I believe it's minute, M-I-N. Oops. Actually, I will look it up because I'm not sure. So I'm going to hit the M key, And let's look at minutes. There we go. So it was MIN. Fetch that, put it on the stack, and notice I'm using double quotes. You did have to do that. Now let's say I want to do Newton meters per second, and yes, I know that's a watt, but just to show you the flexibility, I could do Newton millimeters per hour. You know, it doesn't matter what you do. It's really neat how this worked. So Newton, and we want to do meters. And again, really nice to have this keypad here, rather than having to constantly hit an alpha button. Newton meters per second. I could enter both those and say, okay, convert it. Here's the convert key down here. So shift, convert, and it would just do it. And it didn't matter what you put in, as long as you were consistent with your units. In other words, you couldn't mix slugs and newtons, but that came in really handy sometimes. And whatever, you guys may have different ideas on how you would use it, but I loved that I could just do that anytime I wanted. And one sad thing is, well, maybe not sad, but sad to admit, I never programmed this thing. I don't think I ever once wrote a program. I used the solver like crazy. I had all kinds of different equations saved, and so that's how I would go about, using them. But I never actually built a program where you would enter, say, your different variables and have it automate that and spit out the answer. The solver was so good, I never felt the need to, I think is the reality. So that was a whirlwind tour of this calculator, but it is just a superb little machine, and I loved it. It was so helpful in my undergrad, and really I've, to this day, just think the world of this era of calculators. They were so well done. It was HP in its prime, and kind of like an Apple computer of its day. Great calculator. Doesn't get used much anymore. It's often just put away with its batteries out of it. But I was blessed to have one back in the day, and I'm blessed to have one now. And yes, the battery door actually is still fine on this one. It is definitely a weak spot, which is also why I don't use this a ton, or much at all, I guess. So thanks for watching. Thanks for all of you who have subscribed, and also to those of you who have interacted in the comments. I've learned a lot from you guys, and I thank you for it, and hope to keep creating videos that you will watch. All right, wish you the best. Later.